Grüezi ragazzi, bienvenue und willkommen in one of our new episode live. This time around, we are very happy to be joined with the guys from Prohibition Partners. Here we have Alex and Lawrence, who actually have put together this third edition of the Pharmaceutical Cannabis Report. We already, in their world, in Prohibition Partner channel, we actually had a live an hour long, and I think it's already on their YouTube channel as well. So where we already discussed some of the conclusions that we put together as Cannabiscientia and Prohibition Partner in organizing this report. So definitely check that out, because we spoke other things, but because it's pretty full of content, and many people were kind of still left with questions after that 1 hour long live. We thought, well, why don't we continue with some of the topics on our own channel for our general half an hour live. So we'll try our best to synthesize some of the concept today. Hi everyone, and thank you for being here. Obviously, for anyone that is watching later, thank you. Hi. And without further ado, I will mute myself very soon and perhaps start to get into the core of some of the topics of today. And obviously, one of the important topic when we think of clinical trials is really the whole point of patenting and IP. And so I'm going to jump this question directly to Alex, perhaps. If you wanted to elaborate a little bit on the insights that we drawn from the report regarding the patents, how what's the trend in the pharmaceutical cannabis industry, and especially how are patents in a way affecting competition and innovation in this field? Hi.
So I think I'll actually take this one because it was me who wrote the patent section of the report. Although I'm sure Alex would also have a lot to say, so maybe I'm stealing the limelight here. But yeah, I mean, for now, feel free to jump in at any time, Alex, if you like.
Thanks, Lawrence. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, what we're looking at here is a breakdown of well, firstly on the left you have the patent offices that all of GW Pharma's patents are registered, which is owned by Jazz Pharmaceuticals, of course. And on the right, you have the breakdown between their two subsidiary companies. So, I mean, we should zoom out for a second and just say that in the patent space in general, in terms of the medical application of cannabinoids, GW Pharma is dominant in the space, hugely dominant, and has been for a couple of decades now, pretty much. Their domination is only growing, really. There's only a few other companies that have anywhere near the same size of patent portfolio as they do, and it's really, they're not, if they're focused on cannabinoids, then they're not as focused on the medical application of cannabinoids. I mean, one that springs to mind, for example, is Canopy Growth, who have a big patent portfolio, but it's not, based around specific cannabinoids used to treat specific conditions. It's related to manufacturing methodologies, new devices, and things that are linked to the recreational market as well. So when we are looking at patents in the pharmaceutical cannabis space, the main thing that we're looking at is the GW Pharma portfolio. And so what we did when we looked at the GW Pharma portfolio, we looked at some of the other ones as well, and I think we'll get onto that in a little while. But looking at the GW Pharma portfolio actually gives a pretty good representation of what the cutting edge is in the space. This here is a key terms breakdown, so we looked at each of the patent families in GW Pharma's portfolio and what each of them was actually relevant to. And here they're color coded by whether they're cannabinoid related, what they're related to, cannabinoid related, condition related, or methodology related. A lot of them, relate to all three. And it's no surprise that CBD and epilepsy and seizures rate very highly here, because that's related to their Epidyolex product. But you can also see that, so the main cannabinoids that are patented and that see patent activity are still CBD and THC, or compounds that are close to these. So CBDV, THCV, CBDA, these kinds of things. And what they're patented for is a lot around other seizures from other conditions. So even though epilepsy is the main one, there's seizures from other conditions that their use is patented for by GW, in case, you know, Epidyolex is found to be useful, or another CBD-based compound is found to be useful for treating other seizures. But also, so to look at other conditions, cancer is a huge one, and especially the use of CBD and THC together to treat cancer. We see a lot of patents and patent families in the GW portfolio around that. You also see these analogs of CBD and THC, which are quite prevalent, and they're particularly interesting, I think, because they're quite unique. You know, there's strong IP connected to those. So what's interesting on the patent side as well, especially for GW, is that, well, although you could say it's worrying for them, is that their both Epidyolex and Sativex, the generics are just around the corner, really, in terms of the next few years. There's a significant amount of sort of jostling between different countries to position themselves as the generic suppliers for CBD, for Epidyolex in the US in particular. And Sativex in Europe is going to go generic as well in the next few years. So yeah, despite the fact that GW have patents that last, you know, until the mid 2030s, I think it is, I think their claim to be the sole provider of Epidyolex is going to run out. So I think, if we have another slide here, Fabio. Okay, I think this might be, I'm not sure exactly what company this is related to, but I think it could be one of the other. Oh no, okay, it's cannabinoid related specifically. So it just reinforces what I was talking about earlier. Almost everyone there, apart from the CBG number of patents there, is starts with CBD or THC. So even though there's been a lot of talk in the media over the past few years about minor cannabinoids and their role, and even though they are interesting, really the main focus is still on the major cannabinoids of CBD and THC, and that's a trend that seems to be continuing. So GW Pharma are actually making more. They're filing more patents on a year-by-year basis now than they have before. You know, they're filing more patents rather than less. So their portfolio is growing and growing, their domination is growing and growing, and their focus remains on these. And it's often, you know, CBD is the main one, but it's often used in combination with others. And the main combination that you see is CBD and THC. But often they'll file a patent that has, you know, primarily it refers to the combination of CBD and THC, but then it also mentions a long list of other minor cannabinoids, just in case they find some interaction that happens to be particularly useful. They have it covered. But yeah, as I said, they focus on the major ones. So in terms of other companies, you do have other companies which have some significant patenting activity. Hanyi Biotech, for example, which is a Chinese firm, has a lot which is related to cosmetics and consumer products as well, but also relates to the medical application, particularly for things like dermal products and skincare, scar treatment, that kind of thing. You have Zynerba Pharmaceuticals, which a lot of their focus. So these portfolios are a lot smaller, I should say that, but Zynerba's focus is on sort of transdermal administration and other dermal administration methods, microgels and patches, that kind of thing.
So we say cosmetics with a claim.
Cosmetics with a claim, yeah, exactly. That could relate to both Zynerba and to Hanyi Biotech. they're sort of covering both angles, right? The consumer side and the medical side.
Sure. Yeah. Totally. I because I am a terrible moderator, and not only I assign the questions to the wrong person, but I also was scrolling through our slides, and I saw that we put together another one that perhaps this one actually is a conversation for Alex, because I'm gonna stop just for a moment this whole patent concept that it's pretty clear to me, and I think it's pretty clear to anyone that has been in this live for the past 10 minutes, that it seems like the pattern is to allocate trials wherever there is already an IP kind of supporting that structure, which seems reasonable and logic. But perhaps there is also another driver to trials, and that comes from innovation. And I think it's worth, especially in this period, that we are looking more and more into AI. What can it do for us? What can it do to the industry, and so on? Thinking on how this can be a driver for trials as well, and how can simplify our life. And perhaps this time I get the right speaker. Thank you, Alex. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. So yeah, when we are looking at technology and how it's, driving the pharmaceutical cannabis industry, it's happening everywhere. So it's happening from, upstream technologies, right, like from the cultivation and agri-tech side, right down to the downstream, like as Lawrence was mentioning, formulations and how product formats are, used, and compositions. When we're talking about upstream technologies, we're talking about obviously the kind of agri-tech side. So one aspect here, as you can see on the slide, is F1 hybrid seeds. So what is F1 hybrid seeds? It's basically creating a uniform seed that provides consistent results. As a pharmaceutical player, you want to create a product that is standardized and creates maximum yields. So F1 hybrid seeds are basically a line of two inbred genes that have been traditionally have been bred over time. This can take several years to create a seed that is optimized and has the same consistent values in repetition. Nowadays, we're seeing that with the use of CRISPR and gene editing tools is getting a lot more easier. So why would we want such a seed? It's basically, they're uniform, they create stable results and produce productive yields, depending on what kind of yield you want. Like, are they also resistant to certain illnesses, as well as will they have certain terpene profiles and cannabinoid content, which is obviously really important for the pharmaceutical sector. So we expect these to be, very dominant in the coming years. As well as that, we're looking at AI and robotics being involved. So especially in cultivation. Nowadays, we're seeing that these AI and robotic tools are being used to assess crop health and also for post-harvesting process. So one such tool is a video scanner, or a 3D video scanner, which can monitor crop health in real time. This not only provides efficiency for the pharmaceutical companies, but also provides oversight and plant health to ensure quality and consistency. Another tool would be robotic trimmers that we're also seeing in the market. So they have around like a 97% accuracy rate, which is higher than a human trimmer. So with these new technologies, we're not only going to see cost efficiency, but actually more productive yields, which is really fascinating, and also a reduction in labor costs and time. So it might be worrying that we might see robots take over the future, but I think for creating a standardized product, we will see that in the future more. Another thing that we might see in innovation is when we look at midstream technology. So this is when we're looking at technologies associated with extraction. So with there's currently, and we were all similar that we all are aware of the different extraction methods that are present. So ethanol extraction, CO2, but there's now a new extraction method that I came across, and that's the vapor static extraction method. So that is usually they use vapor to actually so they vaporize cannabis biomass and then they shock cool it, and then they return it into a vapor and then into a crude oil. Now, why would someone use this method? Apparently, it is, a more efficient way of doing things, as it is solventless, and it's a very it only needs a smaller space. So that might cut a lot of costs. When we're looking at downstream technologies, which are concerned with product formats, there's a wide range of things happening there. So the delivery formats are just getting more and more versatile. So we have product formulations and delivery formats that are focused specifically on certain conditions. And that's where it goes back into, as well as the patents. So when we look at the patents in the industry, we're not looking only at what CBD, for example, can do for certain ailments, but how CBD is administered. We also have that with THC. So we're seeing a lot of use of transdermal and dermal, like Lawrence mentioned. So dermal meaning over the skin, and transdermal obviously under the skin. As well as that, we're looking at we're seeing lipid-based nanoformulations. And these are very interesting because these increase the bioavailability and provide sustained release. So this is something that we might see in the future with more, to treat pain and other sort of chronic illnesses, where it provides sustained release and also encourages and increases the uptake of the cannabinoids into the body. So those are the current innovations that we are currently seeing there, which is still exciting.
There is a lot. I see Fabio nodding as well on yes, on some of the method of administration, and truly I understand also that perhaps one of the most challenging areas to protect with an IP tends to be the claim for a pathology, because that needs to be claimed with a phase 3 usually. And so this is a good way to go around and to start to see whether a particular method perhaps has a better bioavailability, and it can start the process that obviously it's a process that is an expensive process, so somehow needs to get back to who's investing in this process. Talking on investment, perhaps I see you nodding, and perhaps Alex wants to comment on this, because and this is what I like about this collaboration, that we successfully are bridging from this bad boy, the book that we co-published together, and then the report. And I really like how we can have this multidisciplinarity on looking at science, yes, but markets as well, because those two things, when we look at the pharma aspect of cannabis, obviously need to go together. Science is an expensive practice, so who's going to fund it and how it's going to generate revenue? And well, I leave the stage to you if you want to comment on significant
100%.
M&A.
Yeah, thank you, Vio. So with M&A activity, it is a kind of an exciting time, because if we see a lot of M&A activity happening in the pharmaceutical sector, that means that we're seeing companies normalizing cannabis for pharmaceutical and medical reasons, right? So when we see that, that means there's more potential and more money going into R&D projects. So obviously one of the main M&A transactions that occurred was obviously the GW Pharma transaction by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. Now, that was around $7.2 billion transaction. That is a very, very big transaction in the space. Now, following that, I think in 2022, we saw, Pfizer coming in, and Pfizer being one of the biggest pharmaceutical players in the world, actually acquiring Arena Pharmaceuticals is kind of promising, because that we're seeing traditional pharmaceutical players now entering the market. And Arena Pharmaceuticals, they're currently working on a cannabinoid-based therapeutic called Orlorinab, and which is focusing on a number of, it's like focusing on the agonist of CBD2 receptors, and it's currently being investigated for gastrointestinal disorders. So when we see these players now entering the market and looking at cannabis or cannabinoids as viable options for treatment of specific disorders, that is promising for the future. And not only are we seeing these large pharmaceutical players entering the market, but using M&A to enter the market, but we're also seeing pharmaceutical players expanding themselves by acquiring certain pharmaceutical companies in Germany, in Europe, in Canada, and USA, which makes it more exciting and more money just flowing into the kind of clinical trials and research and development sectors.
Absolutely, and thank you for mentioning as well that when we talk about this world, we're definitely not just talking about what comes from the plant, but also from compounds that can activate or inhibit certain enzymes or receptors that can be done exogenously by other compounds, very, very simply, right? Drug design. So, and in that sense, this report has been looking as well at any molecule that exists in the industry that has been created with the goal to modulate the endocannabinoid system, in a sense. And Arena, it's a good example of that. I was sneaking through, watching our slides, and I see again going through with this conversation that we wanted to show something. Perhaps I don't know if we jumped the ball back again to Lawrence on the market sizing. Don't need to stay too long, but perhaps it's worth taking back again the conversation from where we stopped it before with the whole Epidyolex, Sativex. Perhaps you want to tell us something about Dronabinol, since it's like one of the players as well in there, definitely older player, but in some regions still relevant.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, just to clarify, because I know this is a sort of a question we get a lot when we talk about pharmaceutical cannabis. We certainly are only talking about the drugs which have gone through the clinical trials and have been approved by health authorities for medical marketing and have got marketing authorization from these health authorities. So that's why we're not seeing the likes of Tilray products being sold in Germany here, or flower products. And when we talk about pharmaceutical cannabis, there's only really 3 products that we're talking about in a large sense, and that's Epidyolex, Sativex, and Dronabinol. And as you mentioned, Dronabinol is kind of a legacy one, right? Because it was decades ago. And when we say Dronabinol, we mean pure THC, delta 9 THC, and that was first approved by the American authorities decades ago, and it's reached generic status all over the world, pretty much. And the only market where it's really growing at the moment is in Europe, and based mainly in Austria. Everywhere else, it's either completely stable, which is the case in the US, or it's actually stagnating a bit, which is in Germany. So we don't expect to see much action on a large scale, let's say, in terms of market development from Dronabinol. Epidyolex is really the one that's driving the growth in pharmaceutical cannabis sales, and that's concentrated in the US, in a big way. We don't see we see a little bit of growth in Europe, and it's spreading from country to country, but it's really concentrated in the US. There's been promising signs from Japan, actually. I should just mention that not only for pharmaceutical cannabis, but also for medical cannabis. They only allowed the use of Epidyolex in clinical trials, and that looks set to change with a new change to the law. So we could actually see a lot more Epidyolex being sold in Japan, but medical cannabis in general in the coming years, which is quite interesting. And just to mention Sativex, just because it's there, it's another one that's been quite stagnant for a while, but it's entering its, as we mentioned earlier, both Epidyolex and Sativex will see generics coming into the market a bit more in the coming years. So we could see Sativex sales actually growing, because one of the main things that stopped prescriptions of Sativex is not the fact that it's seen as ineffective, but it's the fact that it's not seen as cost effective by health authorities. So when the price of that comes down with generics, we might actually see more use of that, which is quite interesting. So yeah, I'll leave it there in terms of the market sizing, I think.
Thank you. So we still have
from business back to science.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. I think the only thing I would like to add about this is that obviously for the making of Sativex, there has been way more years of science to be paid for. So in a sense, it just makes sense that Epidyolex is taking over faster and easier. It's the problem of when you pioneer something, it's going to be harder the road. I see that we have barely 5 minutes to be discussing with the non-guest, but I just felt like it was making sense to start with the contribution that Prohibition Partner guys could bring over, and perhaps have a little brush, and perhaps even continuing this in a next one that is more internal with myself and Fabio, on discussing a bit more on the clinical trials aspect in terms of what target pathologies and what cannabinoids have been prevailing. Fabio, I will leave it to you to pace yourself. Tell us what you managed to tell us in these 4 minutes, and I'll intervene if I can with the.
Yeah, okay, thank you all. I just can try to make a summary of the clinical trials regarding cannabis and cannabinoids. And when analyzing this trial, we can see that the significant portion of pharmaceutical trials have focused on pain, especially chronic and neuropathic pain. We must say that pain is a broad term that includes a lot of conditions that have been treated in clinical trials, such as fibromyalgia, cancer-related pain, and pelvic pain, surgical pain, and so on. And probably the fact that the most of the ongoing and completed trials focus on pain demonstrate the efficacy of cannabinoid-based therapy on this condition, pain. Regarding other condition, as we can see, epilepsy has been treated in a lot of clinical trials, and a significant increase in last years has been in trials regarding mental-related disorders such as anxiety, depression, and so on. Moreover, a lot of effort have been made to analyze the role of cannabinoids in neurological and neurodegenerative conditions such as Parkinson, Alzheimer, and also multiple sclerosis. There have been a focus also on cancer. Most of cancer-related trials focus on pain-related cancer, and so for the use of cannabis and cannabinoid as palliative medication for the patients. But there have been also a few trials that have explored the cannabinoids for cancer condition, especially glioblastoma. And we have seen some kind of success both with especially with CBD, but also with THC. So indeed, for example, both CBD and THC have been designed as orphan drugs by Food and Drug Administration for conditions like glioblastoma. Other conditions can include, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder, insomnia, and something like a sleep disorder. Of course, gastrointestinal problems, especially IBD and IBS. And disregard clinical trials in all the phases of clinical trials, so phase 1, 2, 3. Regarding phase 3, that is the most the conclusion of clinical trials before putting a drug on the market. We see, of course, a few trials. Always these trials are sponsored by big companies, as we was saying before, especially jets, and so they focus on patent compounds, Epidyolex, Sativex, and Dronabinol, and here we can see that other conditions, for example, include also autoimmune spectrum disorders, especially regarding CBD, other disorders. And very interesting, there are various trials that are trying to analyze the role of cannabis also in alcohol use disorder. That is something that can be relevant. Well, I think that it's time to stop myself. So, Viola, I give you
Yes,
the floor.
thank you, Fabio. Well, we'll definitely call in perhaps another time in which we'll look into comparison the studies CBD, the study THC. But this is just to say we're just scratched the surface of this report. The report is already on sale. You can find it on Prohibition Partner page. I'm sure perhaps the guys can give you more details on that, or otherwise, every Tuesday we're here. We have these sessions in which we analyze the industry from one side to the other, and that's totally for free. And if you don't manage to get us online live, then find us on our YouTube channel. So thank you, and see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.